Mark Rogers TV talking college football recruiting. It's, of course, the early signing period. And if you know anything about the workload of these college football coaches, they work all the time. It's almost nonstop. They barely get a vacation. And now we're in a situation in which most of them, consider this, 80 of them prepare for a postseason game at the end of December, early January. And then they've got to recruit on top of that to get ready for an early signing period for the first time here in 2017. We bring in Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football to talk the Tennessee slice of this. So even though Jeremy Pruitt comes into a new program, he doesn't have to worry about the postseason game, but transitioning to a new program and then being hit right in the face with an early signing period, a very difficult situation, and trying to maintain this Butch Jones class.
Yeah, Mark, in fact, you talked about the heavy workload of college football coaches, and Jeremy Pruitt doesn't have to worry. Jeremy Pruitt not only has to worry about building this Tennessee recruiting class from scratch, but he is coaching in a postseason bowl. He's dual-hatted as both a Tennessee head coach and still will be coaching the Alabama defensive side in their college football semifinal against Clemson on January 1st. So he is actually really pulling more of the weight than most of these coaches with two different jobs. He's actually recruiting against his current boss, Nick Saban, on at least one account, Dominique Wood-Anderson, who committed to Tennessee or signed with Tennessee just a few hours ago. So, Jeremy Pruitt pulling a lot of long hours this week, both on building really from scratch this new Tennessee recruiting class and working as defensive coordinator for Alabama as they get ready to face Clemson in the Sugar Bowl.
Hey, Mike, on the surface, the press has been generally bad for Tennessee, considering the pursuit of a college football coach and how that was depicted because of the Greg Schiano situation in particular, and then being turned down a number of times, going through 8 or 10 guys. So that cast a negative shadow on the program. That said, you bring in Jeremy Pruitt, and he's behind the 8 ball trying to catch up just under normal circumstances. But it's the 8th ranked class in the SEC, which for a number of people wouldn't sound that impressive, but you got to consider that typically the top 10 or 11 classes in the conference usually yield a top 25 or 30 ranking nationally. So despite all that adversity, Jeremy Pruitt has been able to maintain what Butch Jones established, it appears on the surface, and also make some headway.
Yeah, it was the coaching search thing was a complete fiasco. The decision by the previous athletic administrator, John Curry, to even think about hiring Greg Schiano was one of the worst ideas ever in the history of the Tennessee athletic department. And then the fallout from that was just an absolute fiasco. So it's been a rough up and down 6 weeks for Tennessee fans. Butch Jones, when he left, had about the 5th ranked recruiting class in the nation. Is certainly a consensus top 10 recruiting class. But of course, just because you can sell ice to an Eskimo doesn't mean you can coach football teams. So that recruiting prowess wasn't able to keep him around. He was let go. Then we had the coaching search fiasco. And then when Jeremy Pruitt came on board, a lot of guys jumped ship. Cade Mays left, 5-star offensive tackle from right there in Knoxville, the shadows of Neyland Stadium, Knoxville Catholic High School. He signed with Georgia today. Adrian Martinez flipped in Nebraska, signed with Nebraska today. So a lot of the top names in Tennessee's recruiting class, that top 10 consensus recruiting class, left. So Jeremy Pruitt, at the beginning of this morning, Tennessee was ranked by 247 Sports Industry Composite, about the 52nd ranked team. As we tape this now tonight, they're at about 26, like you said, I think 8th in the conference. So Jeremy Pruitt did a lot of good work today. Again, talked about going head-to-head against his boss, Nick Saban, for the top tight end in JUCO, Dominique Wood-Anderson out of California. So that was a big get for him today. So there were some good things and some bad things. Of course, Tennessee fans are going to be a little bit disappointed with how Pruitt and his staff are having to start over. Not only is Pruitt working double duty, but his defensive coordinator, Scherer, is working double duty with Georgia as well. So a lot of the staff is working double duty. Really haven't filled out the staff completely as well, but still, really the word of the day is salvaged. Jeremy Pruitt has salvaged this recruiting class. He did keep a couple in-state 4-stars. Greg Emerson out of Jackson was a big deal. Brant Lawless out of Nashville was a big deal. And then probably the biggest thing, not the best athlete, but the biggest deal was Jerome Carvin out of Memphis. We thought Mississippi State was in the lead when Dan Mullen went to Florida. They came in. But for Jerome Carvin to go to Tennessee, that's a pretty big get for Jeremy Pruitt. Memphis has never been a strong point for Tennessee. You got Ole Miss right outside the back door. Memphis has always been a basketball and AAU town. You go back to the Tuies with the blind side. Memphis has always been a tough town for Tennessee recruits on the opposite end of the state. So for Pruitt to go in there and get Jerome Carvin and 3-star running back Jeremy Banks, his teammate, that was a pretty big get for Pruitt. Fans aren't going to be happy that he lost several of the in-state guys. Cade Mays, top of mind, Master Teague, but of course he had committed to Ohio State when Butch was here. But still, I believe Pruitt's able to get the 5 of the top 13 prospects in the state of Tennessee. Tennessee fans would like to see a little bit bigger, kind of have 7 or 8 of the top 15 in the state of Tennessee, but still 5 of the top 13. Again, Pruitt was able to salvage this class. That's really what it boils down to. I think that's the best descriptor.
So, Mike, my thought is that it's going to be extremely difficult for a Jeremy Pruitt to come in, considering the negative pub over the coaching hiring process, and with Tennessee losing all of its SEC games and the competition that they have to deal with in Georgia in particular, and then all the other opponents in the SEC, to sell that kind of situation to a guy that can go anywhere, one of the top 5 at his particular position. But the next level guy, the guy that's really, really good, that could turn out to be an impact player or a star player, but isn't that highly regarded to the elite level, maybe he's top 20 to 30 at his position. Maybe he sells it as, look around you. We still pack out the house at 100,000. We still have all this prestige and tradition. We've got the resources. We've got a fresh new start, and you can be a building block. You can be a pillar and not get lost in the shuffle somewhere else. You can be a building block of this particular program and make something special happen. I would think that would be the selling point.
Yeah, the art of recruiting is really the dark art of football. You really got to tell the recruits what they want to hear. For some of those guys, it's how do we get to the NFL? You can look at Tennessee and say, look at our facilities. We got pro scouts here every day. We got guys from the NFL that come back all the time. Peyton Manning's on campus all the time. Jason Witten's on campus all the time. So if it's getting to the NFL, Tennessee can sell that with anyone, with the facilities and the alumni. If it's a guy like, a perfect example of who you're talking about, like a top-end guy that's not one of the 5 stars, is Greg Emerson. They're out of Jackson, Tennessee. If you look at him and Lawless, they grew up as Tennessee fans, so you can still sell the Tennessee brand to some guys. And then if you want to talk about playing, some guys are worried about playing opportunities early in their career, with Pruitt coming in and saying, hey, we're starting fresh. We're starting anew. It's a blank slate. Everybody's competing for their job. So if you come in, you'll be competing for the starting job from day one. So really recruiting being the dark art of college football, you got to tell these kids what they want to hear. And that's different for every guy. So you just have to figure out what he wants to hear, and you got to sell that. But I think Jeremy Pruitt can do that. He's a proven recruiter. The thing that really Jeremy Pruitt's strong point with recruiting is all those years as a high school coach, he kind of understands the mentality of the high school kid, kind of as opposed to an NFL coach who might come from the NFL to the college ranks, working with the professional athletes, dealing with the salary cap and the money. He might have lost touch with the psyche of the high school athlete. Jeremy Pruitt has a background in high school football, never been in the NFL. He's worked at the college level since he's been on the high school ranks. So I think he really understands that the psyche of the high school athlete. I think that's really what allows him to connect to the recruits on the recruiting trail.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It may not be the best timing for this to be a smallish class. 11 signed, 5 are hard commits, expected to sign by the February signing period deadline, that first Wednesday of the month. But I don't know what the distribution of the roster is right now. If this particular class meets some of those requirements in regards to filling some holes and meeting some depth issues, but just your thought about the size of the class, maybe not being the best time to have a smaller class.
Yeah, I think it's never a good time to have a small class. I say this all the time in my articles. We're kind of in the era of college football free agency. If you look at the guys who transfer, Shea Patterson out of Ole Miss to Michigan, I think Vance Jefferson from Ole Miss to Florida. And of course, the Ole Miss situation is a little bit different, but you see this quite often, or you see it more often today than you have in the past, the era of college football free agency. So it's never good. It's never good to have a small class. I think what you'll see is once Pruitt gets done in Alabama, once they either lose a game or win the championship, once he gets on campus at Tennessee and can go 24/7 in Knoxville, he'll build out that class. He'll go and Tennessee will sign. I would think they would not sign any less than 22 guys. If you look back, kind of the history of the Butch Jones recruiting, Butch Jones was known as a great recruiter, getting a lot of guys in, but there were a lot of guys that left the program. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but in the past 5 years, I think we're up to 35 or more people who left the Tennessee program. Most notably 5-star Jalen Hurd, who left in the middle of last season, in the middle of the previous season, and is now at Baylor. But Tennessee had a lot of guys that left the program under Butch Jones, and some of those were highly ranked, highly rated guys. Of course, Juwan Jennings was kicked off the team by Brady Hoke. He was another 5-star guy in the Middle Tennessee area. Possible that he comes back. But no, you're absolutely right. It's not a good time to have a small class, but I think Pruitt will fill out that class once he gets to Knoxville permanently and can work that job 24/7. He'll go after 10 guys who may be committed elsewhere now. The young man Griffin, cornerback, currently committed to UCLA, I think is a guy that Pruitt's going to hit hard once he gets into Knoxville. See if he can flip him, get him to Knoxville. But I think Pruitt's going to sign at a minimum 22 guys, if not 24, 26.
Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football joining us to break down the Tennessee recruiting class with 11 signed, 5 more hard commits that could come into the fold in the next 5 to 6 weeks. Tennessee now currently ranks 28th in the country, according to 247 Sports, and 8th in the SEC.